Most people, when they think about the origins of economic thought, immediately jump to names like Adam Smith, Karl Marx, or, if they paid a bit more attention in school, Aristotle. But hidden deep inside the medieval world is a quieter truth, one that Western historical narratives rarely teach. About 1,000 years ago, long before capitalism, stock markets, or central banks even existed, a Muslim thinker issued a warning, one that still echoes in every financial crisis we experience today. He said this: "When money loses its moral compass, societies begin to rot from the inside." And looking at the world we live in now, he may have understood us far better than we realize. Welcome to Stories Behind the Money, a place where money, power, and morality collide, and where nothing is ever as simple as it looks. To understand Al-Ghazali, one of the most influential thinkers of the Islamic Golden Age, you need to imagine a world that feels both familiar and strangely foreign. The year is around 1100. Europe is fragmented and poor, still struggling to recover from the ruins of the early Middle Ages. But the Islamic world tells a very different story. From Al-Andalus in Spain to the lands of Persia, cities are thriving. They are wealthy, crowded, and remarkably advanced. Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo. These are not just cities. They are financial and intellectual power centers. Trade routes are alive with caravans carrying silk, spices, textiles, and silver. Scholars debate philosophy, law, astronomy, and medicine. Markets are buzzing. Empires are rich. And wealth is transforming society at a pace no one fully understands. And it is in the middle of this explosion of trade and growing inequality that one scholar steps forward. Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali. He is part philosopher, part jurist, part theologian, and a fierce critic of moral decay. The kind of thinker who can explain the purpose of the soul and the purpose of a monetary system in the same breath. Born in 1058 in Persian lands, Al-Ghazali rises quickly through the intellectual ranks. By his mid-30s, he holds one of the most prestigious academic positions in the Islamic world. But what makes him special isn't his status. It's his refusal to accept the status quo. He sees a world where wealth is increasing, markets are expanding, but something feels deeply wrong. A society obsessed with money, yet increasingly disconnected from meaning. An economy that looks prosperous on the outside, but is quietly decaying within. Sound familiar? Al-Ghazali dares to ask a question very few people are brave enough to ask. What happens when a civilization becomes rich before it becomes wise? To answer this, he turns his attention to money itself. This is the part that surprises many Western audiences. Al-Ghazali wasn't just a religious thinker. He was one of the earliest philosophers to analyze money in moral and systemic terms. While Aristotle treated money as a practical tool, and later economists reduced it to equations and models, Al-Ghazali focused on its psychological and spiritual impact. He studied how money shapes human behavior, our incentives, our trust in one another, and ultimately, the fate of entire nations. To Al-Ghazali, money was never meant to be worshipped, hoarded, or used as a status symbol. It was a tool, a facilitator of exchange, He famously compared money to a mirror. A mirror has no value on its own. It only reflects what stands before it. Money is the same. Its power doesn't come from gold or silver, but from its ability to help people trade, build, and cooperate. Today, modern economists love this idea. But Al-Ghazali was writing it in the 11th century, at a time when much of Europe still viewed wealth primarily as land or plunder. From this foundation comes one of his most important insights. Hoarded money is dead money. Wealth locked away in chests, hidden in rooms, or buried in courtyards isn't just useless. It's socially destructive. Money that doesn't circulate, doesn't pay workers, doesn't support trade, and doesn't keep families afloat. It suffocates economic life. Al-Ghazali described this as freezing a society's bloodstream, a phrase that still fits perfectly in today's debates about inequality. But he didn't stop at criticizing greed. His argument was systemic. When the wealthy hoard money, they create scarcity, not because resources are gone, but because circulation is blocked. Prices distort, markets break down, ordinary people suffer. And this leads him to his next major idea. Speculation destroys trust. Al-Ghazali had little patience for traders who manipulated prices, created artificial shortages, or profited from crises. To him, speculation wasn't clever strategy. It was profit without contribution. Moral corruption. Whoever profits from the suffering of others, he wrote, profits from corruption. And corruption, in his view, was contagious. Once it begins, it spreads, from markets to institutions, and eventually to the entire society. If you're thinking about modern financial bubbles, predatory lending, or crisis profiteering, yes, same story, just written 900 years earlier. Importantly, Al-Ghazali was not against profit. He wasn't against trade. He wasn't calling for vows of poverty. He believed commerce was natural and necessary. Wealth could be meaningful, even noble. His target was dishonest trade, fraud, deception, false weights, hiding defects, manipulating information. Markets, he argued, only function when trust exists. And when trust collapses, the economy collapses right behind it. In this sense, Al-Ghazali was describing, without jargon, what modern economists now call transaction costs, information asymmetry, and moral hazard. Another core belief of his was the value of labor. He saw work as honorable, and unearned income as spiritually dangerous. Money earned through effort builds character. Money earned through manipulation corrodes it. This wasn't just a moral judgment, it was practical. Societies grow stronger when people contribute. They weaken when people exploit. Al-Ghazali didn't limit his criticism to individuals. He was also one of the earliest thinkers to criticize state manipulation of money. Medieval rulers, much like modern governments, often debased currency, reducing gold or silver content to stretch budgets. In other words, they imposed hidden inflation. Al-Ghazali called this exactly what it was: theft. It destroyed market trust. It punished the poor first, and it collapsed financial systems from the top down. He accepted that the state had a role in protecting fair markets, but that role was limited. Leaders were meant to safeguard the economy, not manipulate it for short-term gain. Unjust rulers, he warned, destroy prosperity faster than foreign enemies. These weren't abstract theories. Al-Ghazali was observing real governments in real decline. Political fragmentation was increasing. Dynasties fought for legitimacy. Rulers demanded more revenue. And as always, when power became unstable, the economy was squeezed first. Taxes rose, currency was debased, merchants were seized, debt exploded. None of it solved the problem. Corruption at the top spread downward like poison. When rulers deceived the people, merchants felt justified deceiving customers. When institutions abandoned integrity, individuals stopped feeling responsible. The result was clear. A society can survive poverty, but it cannot survive corruption. Economic collapse rarely happens because money runs out. It happens because trust does. For Al-Ghazali, monetary stability was inseparable from honesty. Debasing currency wasn't a policy mistake, it was betrayal. He even predicted that people would eventually abandon their own currency in favor of stronger foreign ones. 1,000 years later, Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Argentina, we've seen exactly that. Inflation debates reveal a deeper truth. Money is a belief system. When people stop believing, it stops working. Al-Ghazali also understood human nature extremely well. People hoard out of fear. They speculate out of greed. They cheat when they think they won't be caught. Money is manipulated because it is easy to manipulate. And when everyone does it, unethical behavior becomes normalized. By the time exploitation feels normal, collapse has already begun. That's why one of his most powerful insights is this: you cannot fix an economy without fixing the incentives that shape human behavior. Laws and markets matter, but people run them, and people act out of fear, desire, and ambition. To Al-Ghazali, wealth without responsibility was incomplete. Societies grow stronger when people give more than they take. When profit is balanced with social benefit, systems endure. But when that balance breaks, systems become fragile. And eventually, they fall. Everyone pays the price, even the richest. The world we live in today feels like an updated version of Al-Ghazali's analysis. Record debt, speculative frenzy, rising inequality, collapsing trust in institutions. Technology has changed. The scale has grown. But human behavior hasn't. If Al-Ghazali were alive today, he might say this: without justice, prosperity cannot last. Economies don't collapse because numbers fail, but because people stop trusting one another. Al-Ghazali wasn't preaching. He was describing reality. He understood that money is not a mechanical object, but a moral ecosystem. And when morality collapses, finance follows. That's why his ideas still matter. Because history may not repeat itself. But if you don't understand it, it will crush you anyway. And if this gave you a new perspective, don't forget to subscribe.